Welcome in. It is a Sports by the Book special draft week in the National Football League. I'm Jeff Parles. Happy to be with you. Behind me, you just saw the NFL draft order, which we can do now with our handy-dandy screen behind us, which is very nice. And now joining me to help us through what has been a very interesting lead-up, to put it politely, to the NFL draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin, coming up on Thursday. It's the one and only Hammer. You see him on Up and Adams. You see him on KCSN. It's our good friend Matt Hamilton with us right now on the other side of the screen. Hammer, how have you enjoyed what has been a perplexing lead up to this year's NFL draft?
It has made things interesting, that's for sure. We may not have, the huge quarterback prospects that we love to dissect this time of year, but there's a lot going on and a lot to try to figure out, and I don't think anybody's closer to the answer outside of those first two picks yet.
So you just said it. I was just going to start there. We know Cam Ward's going one, which I'll just ask you as a prospect, Matt, because you've watched all these guys tape-wise.
Yeah.
I think this is just kind of happening out of necessity more so than anything from Tennessee. Like, you have the first pick. I liked Ward in Miami. I never really saw number one overall pick potential with Ward, but because of the disaster season Will Levis had, and you happen to have the number one pick, you're kind of obligated to take Cam Ward at number one when you don't think Shedeur Sanders or any of these other quarterbacks are worthy of that pick.
Yeah, and I do like Cam Ward a lot. I don't think he's, your traditional, you think of number one overall quarterback, perfect prospect. Like, he's not what you think about there, but there's a lot to like about his game. He's immensely talented. The stuff he's able to do off platform, the way he's able to anticipate throws, he really checks every box that you look for in a quarterback. He's just not, he doesn't have that outstanding wow trait in any of these areas. He's just very good at everything, which could mean he's a great quarterback in the NFL. That's everything that he's good at tends to project pretty well into the league. It's just, I think there's that question of just how high the ceiling is because he doesn't have those elite traits in any one area.
And for Tennessee, it kind of is in the category of it can't be much worse than it was last year with Levis, because it was as bad as you could have drawn up. I'm honestly kind of surprised that Brian Callahan even stuck with him as long as he did. Granted, he didn't have much of a chance, much of a choice, I should say, with Mason Rudolph as the backup. Hey, Mason Rudolph right now is the week one starter in Pittsburgh at this current moment, because Aaron Rodgers has not signed with Pittsburgh just yet. And at number two, look, Andrew Berry tipped his hand last week. Like, Travis Hunter's going number two. And look, unless if that was some 7-dimensional chess from Berry trying to get a king's ransom for someone to take Hunter at two, it makes sense for the Browns. They need a high-end wide receiver to help Denzel Ward on the other side. It would be a big help to have Hunter be able to come in as a number two corner in the NFL as opposed to having to be a number one. It just makes sense from a Cleveland perspective, where if you don't love Shedeur, Travis Hunter's the most talented player in this draft. It checks out that the Browns are going to do what they do at two.
Oh, absolutely. And I saw Daniel Jeremiah today said that the feeling is he's going to major in wide receiver and minor in corner. So primarily use at wide receiver. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm not convinced that they don't find a way to get both Travis Hunter and Shedeur. The more I look at things, the more, I listen to, the way things are blowing in the wind. If Shedeur does fall, really, it's going to come down, and I'm sure we'll get there in a little bit, but it's going to come down to the Saints. And if the Saints don't take him at 9, what happens with him? And if he starts moving into the back half of that first round, I wouldn't be shocked if we see the Browns maybe try to make a move up and get him and pair those two guys together again.
So, you know what? We're going to go there because you just brought it up. Because to me, Sanders, I've always thought that Sanders was the best quarterback in this draft. The biggest knocks, as we know, holds the ball too long. And he doesn't do anything great. He just does everything really. And I would say about a 7.5, 8 out of 10, as opposed to anything that's a true 10 out of 10 guy. But look, you just mentioned it. I'm convinced he's going to New Orleans. The Derek Carr injury is so bizarre and so out of left field of when it was announced that kind of felt like New Orleans is tipping their hand that, hey, we might move up and even take Sanders. We might trade with the Raiders at 6 or the Jets with 7 to make sure that we get him. But if he does fall past the Saints and you see those betting odds, Cleveland is currently the second betting favorite for Shedeur Sanders with Pittsburgh at number 3. It could be a precipitous fall. And then Pittsburgh is sitting there right after Denver. It's just one of those scenarios here, Matt, where it could mean Cleveland has to trade with Tampa or with Denver to make sure that Pittsburgh doesn't take Shedeur there at number 20.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do get this. There's a growing sense. I still think he lands in New Orleans, but there is a growing sense that maybe he doesn't right now. And we're hearing a lot of rumors about the Saints possibly looking to get aggressive in the second round and move up in the second round, or possibly even into the late first from their second round pick, which, if they're making calls about that and interested in that, that makes me think that maybe they're not taking Shedeur at 9, right? Because who else are you really doing that much homework and aggressively looking to trade up for at this stage? So it all depends, I think, how these teams really view him. Like, how far apart is Shedeur from a Jackson Dart or a Milrow, right? Like, if you have those guys fairly even, maybe you don't take Shedeur at 9. Maybe you do wait and take a swing at one of these guys later. So I think that is a very real thing that's still on the table based on what I'm hearing. But to your point, you get a pretty complete player in there. You don't have a quarterback right now. It's also very hard to pass that up at 9.
So let's just keep it with the quarterback discussion because, again, we know quarterbacks get overdrafted in this thing. This has always been a draft to me where teams that are picking early in the second round will look to climb back in to get that extra year of control. Now, you mentioned Dart, you mentioned Milrow. I'm going to throw Tyler Shuck in there as well, who seems to be flying up draft boards as well over the last few weeks. And if Cleveland doesn't end up with Sanders, I think that's where Shuck actually ends up. But this kind of feels like, Matt, where this will be a draft that will be super, super active at the end of the first round, which makes betting knows how many quarterbacks will go in the first round props interesting. And also, too, will make draft position slot stuff interesting on Dart and Milrow and Shuck specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit it right on the head. You want to, if you're an NFL team, we saw what the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
You want to get in and get that guy at the end of the first round. So if he does pan out, you get the 5th-year option and that extra year on his rookie contract. And with the way that a lot of these guys are trending right now, it does look like they're going to be in that late first, early second round territory. So I would not be surprised at all if the phones are ringing off the hooks for the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bills, those teams picking near the end of the first round this year.
And I'll just ask you about Milrow because he seems to be a guy who, again, I don't see it personally. I'm concerned about his throwing ability at the next level, even with, again, somewhat of a similar collegiate profile to an earlier Jalen Hurts, a little bit like an early career Jalen Hurts at Alabama before the Oklahoma years. But what are your thoughts there? Because one of Kenny White, one of our co-hosts, loves Jalen Milrow going into the draft. I'm just curious your thoughts on what you've seen on tape from him.
Yeah, I think there's developing to do there for sure, but I think he has the ability. It's a matter of consistency. To me, when you look at a lot of it, it's not that there's anything he can't do. It's just, can he do it consistently enough? And that's, where I would love to see him go into a situation where he doesn't necessarily have to play right away and can clean up some of those things mechanically. But he is so dynamic as a playmaker and as a runner that, you look at Lamar's profile kind of coming out, and Lamar did have, more prolific success through the air at Louisville, but it is similar. You take a chance, you get somebody in that can be that dynamic of a playmaker, and you develop his passing as he goes along, which we've seen Lamar come leaps and bounds as a passer from where he was as a rookie, when they were using him kind of in tandem with Joe Flacco to start the season, and he eventually took over. So I could see a similar type of an arc as Lamar or Jalen Hurts. I think the situation is going to matter tremendously. The system that he's in is going to matter tremendously. But with the way that the NFL quarterback position has evolved, I think the path is there for him to become a successful starter in this league.
Again, if Ross, as always with all these guys, just kind of a dependence on, like you said, where they land. And I think for Milrow, it would almost be like a project deal. Like if you're Sean McVay and you like Jalen Milrow or Jackson Dart for that matter, you're going to have Matthew Stafford at least one more year, maybe two, even though, again, now that they've gotten through that funkiness of the offseason where Stafford was looking at the Giants and looking at other destinations. That might be the interesting one. But that of the back end of the first round ones, that's always a place where a quarterback can succeed. So I'll at least just throw that out there. Again, I'm not the biggest of Jalen Milrow fans, really. Dude, it scares me that he regressed last year. By the end of the year was regressing. That always scares me, Matt, with guys coming into the NFL when they're regressing on the back end of their last college season.
Yeah, and that is definitely something to be concerned about. I think, we actually we're going to air it on Up and Adams tomorrow. We actually talked to him this afternoon, and he kind of embraces the labels that are on him right now, and he said, I do have a lot to prove. I do have to earn it. I do have to, show people what I can do at the next level. And that's not to say he doesn't have a ton of confidence in his abilities, but he knows there are valid questions out there about him that he's going to have to answer, and that's certainly one of them.
Matt, let's go back to individual teams here. I would just want to go to the Giants real quick, who have had a very interesting offseason, to say the very least. Betting market says it's Abdul Carter. Is there no shock there at this point that they're going to just try to go with this race car style defensive pass rush with Carter and Thibodeau and Brian Burns now on the outside?
I mean, it does seem to be the direction everything is trending right now, and we know the Giants love to have as many pass rushers as you can possibly have. Maybe it opens up for potential Thibodeau trade down the line, because he hasn't totally worked out, I think, the way they anticipated when they took him in the top 5. So we'll see there, but I think, given the options, I mean, Abdul Carter is just such a phenomenal prospect. It's hard to pass that up if you're not absolutely in love. I think if they don't take him, it's because they take Shador, and they have to be absolutely in love with Shador to make that pick. You don't pass on a pass rusher of that caliber for a quarterback that you're not in love with.
We're going to skip over number 4 because I think it's pretty well determined that if Will Campbell makes it to number 4, New England's going to take him to likely be their left tackle for the next 10 to 15 years, knowing how, again, I think he's the best player in this draft personally, but that's a different argument at this point. Number 5 is where this thing has gotten really funky over the last day, where this looked like this is going to be Brandon Graham out of Michigan, Matt. Like, the Jags are just going to take the best defensive player, the second best defensive player in this draft behind Abdul Carter. The betting markets have gone totally nuts today. And we're recording this on Monday, where now you're looking at over 5.5 in most books, approaching a minus 200 price on Graham. So that leads the question to, all right, if it's not Mason Graham and he's falling down the board, is this Jacksonville trading out? Is this Jacksonville taking Ashton Genty at 5? Or is this Jacksonville going and doing something out of left field here?
Yeah, and I mean, we're hearing the Tet McMillan rumors start to swirl this morning. I can't see them doing that at 5 right now. I could see them, maybe if somebody really wants to move up for Genty and they get offered a haul, could see them doing that and then taking Tet McMillan later. Like, let's say the Cowboys at 12, that would be, a great spot for them to take a Tet McMillan. But I do wonder, I mean, can you really sit there at 5 and pass on Ashton Genty if you're the Jaguars right now? Just from, we talked to Trevor Lawrence a little bit after the Super Bowl, talking about Liam Cohen and what their conversations have been and what they envision this offense being. And the theme is just balance. Take stuff off of Trevor's shoulders to help him be more successful, run the football consistently, which they haven't done. And then Liam Cohen coming out in owners' meetings and saying the same type of thing. You put a player like Ashton Genty in that offense, I mean, I don't know what you can do that's going to take more pressure off Trevor Lawrence and help out Trevor Lawrence more than that. So if that is the goal, maximizing what you get out of Trevor Lawrence, which it should be with what they paid him, um, adding an Ashton Genty is really hard to pass up.
So I just want to follow up on the Genty thing because at least my thinking here is this is such a loaded running back draft where you got the Ohio State kicks. You have
Yeah.
Amari at Hampton, who, look, I love Ashton Genty. I thought he should have won the Heisman this past year. But at the NFL level, I don't know if there's a huge difference between Genty and Hampton, who Hampton right now is a projected mid first round, late first round pick. If you're Jacksonville and you got Dallas, who we know Jerry Jones wants Ashton Genty, we know this. Don't you just try to trade out, even though what you said makes a whole lot of sense? Like you are balancing your offense. And for Lawrence, who, let's face it, kind of needs a reinvention of his career right now with how the last last year and a half has really careened off the tracks for Lawrence with injury and substandard play. This is so tricky because again, a week ago I thought the Raiders were taking Genty, and that was pretty much sewed up at that point.
Yeah, no, everything was trending in that direction, and this is throwing a curveball on everything. But I think there's a couple things there, and I think there's definitely validity if you trade back and you get a Ted McMillan and help Trevor in that way, and get more assets. That definitely makes an impact too. But I think with Genty, one of the things that is being a little bit overlooked in this process, if you go back to his film, not from this past year, but the year before, and how much he was used in the passing game.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an untapped, because everybody sees him as this big bruising runner, right? And, that can kind of do it all on the ground. And they didn't really throw him the ball a lot last year. There is an untapped potential there, I think, in the passing game. And I think that's what makes him even more attractive than, you're not just getting a dominant running back. You're getting this guy that you can put in the slot and can actually run some routes. He was actually I don't know how many people, he was a wide receiver in high school in the beginning part of his career too. So he can run routes. He can do a lot of stuff that he didn't even show on tape at Boise State. So I think that's part of the appeal there too is, he's not just helping you on the ground. He's helping you in the passing game as well. I think more than the public perception is right now.
Matt, you of course do a show on the Kansas City Sports Network as well. The Super Bowl losers this year, Kansas City Chiefs, sitting at 31. What do you think they do with that back end first round pick? Do you think they stay there? Do you think they try to move up like they did a year ago to get Worthy, or do you think they even attempt to move back with a team that may be trying to trade in for a late first round quarterback?
It's interesting because you don't see as much controversy around teams picking at the back end of the first round as I've seen with the Chiefs this year, because there are a lot of different schools of thought of what they should do. Do they, they need to address that left tackle spot, I think, still, even with the Jalen Moore signing. So Josh Simmons is an option. He would be going in the top 15 if it wasn't for his injury questions, I think, right now. So I think that's a real possibility if they stick there. But I'm hearing more and more smoke around them potentially trading up too. And if they trade up, I don't know if it's going to be for a Simmons or if it's going to be for a defensive lineman in this class. There's a lot of D-line depth in this class. If they're in love with one of these guys, like a Walter Nolan, they don't really have a true starter next to Chris Jones in that lineup right now. So I think while you may think, oh, they have to go offensive line, there's no other option. Like, no, they need help on that interior D line too. And a guy like Walter Nolan is so immensely talented. I wonder if he starts slipping because of some of the concerns we've heard, potential, character flags, things like that. If he starts slipping a little bit, I wonder if they make a move up for him. And as we said, I think teams are going to be dying to trade back into the end of the first round too. I could see them trading back as well, but I do think it's going to be either a Josh Simmons, the left tackle, or they address the interior of that defensive line. But I think, I think we could see Veach do some interesting things there.
Right now at FanDuel, Chiefs first player drafted -145 on the lineman, +180 on the defensive line /edge, and then it jumps up to 10-1 on a corner for Kansas City. All right, Matt, before we let you go here on this little preview, are there give me two names that you're looking at that on draft day it's like, all right, we can go either way here. Guy that goes much higher than is being projected right now, or a guy that slips a lot more than he's being projected for at the moment?
I think one guy to keep an eye on. I still can't figure out what NFL teams are going to do with him. Is Shamar Stewart? I think the athletic profile is so ridiculous. Obviously, we know the production wasn't really there,
Yeah.
but the athletic profile is so ridiculous. I wouldn't be totally stunned if he goes top 15, which would be unprecedented for someone who had, averaged a sack and a half a year in college. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if we see him go top 15 because, he's athletically comped to Myles Garrett. And then on the other side of it, the wide receiver stuff is really interesting. Like Ted McMillan, we just talked about him, rumors flying around that the Jaguars might take him at 5. I also wouldn't be shocked to see him go at the back end of the first round. I think that is too late for him, but with the way it seems like everybody's really divided on him, I wouldn't be completely shocked. And then the other guy, we talked about him a bunch, but Shador. If Shador makes it past the Saints, I don't know I genuinely don't know what's going to happen there. And I'm not totally convinced the Steelers don't know something about Aaron Rodgers and may not be desperate to take a quarterback there at 21, even if we don't have the official word from Aaron on what he's doing. So that's going to be really interesting to watch as well.
All right. Because you brought it up, I'm ending with this. What's the date Aaron Rodgers officially signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if at all, Matt?
I think we will find out on either Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Okay. All right. So that's also kind of like, I think like my brain is been messed up in this lead up to the draft. It's like, again, for me, it's obviously a little bit different now where it, like 2 years ago was like, oh, it's the same sort of thing, but that didn't get resolved until the week of the draft 2 years ago either. So it could very much, well, actually that happened after the draft when that trade officially went through, even though everyone kind of knew at that point what was going to happen. It's kind of the same deal this go around with Pittsburgh, which I will say if Mason Rudolph was the week 1 starter for the Steelers, that would be kind of funny in all honesty. But since it's him and Skylar Thompson are the only 2 guys on the roster right now, which I didn't even know until our friend Frank Nicotero told us that about 3 months ago, which is always fun. So he's Matt Hamilton. Get him on Up and Adams. Matt Hamilton 25 on the tweets. You guys are going to be out in Green Bay for the draft this week, Matt.
Oh yeah, we are. We will be out there. We're doing shows Thursday and Friday from Green Bay. Going to have a bunch of draft prospects on. Really, really excited for that one. That is a special place. I got to go to Green Bay for the first time during our training camp tour this summer, and it is a special place. I can't imagine what this draft scene is going to look like.
Oh, it's going to be a lot of people in the smallest town in professional sports in North America. So be very interesting to see how it goes out at Lambeau this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the 2025 NFL Draft. Matt, thank you as always for hanging out with us here today.
Jeff, always love coming on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This has been another NFL Draft special here on Sports by the Book. If you're not subscribing, if you happen to find us for the first time, click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. We're live Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern. Myself, Alex White, Kenny White, professional handicapping, our bookmakers, Chris Andrews, Vinny Magliulo, Delaney Colucci also on the show, so you get every perspective about sports betting here in 2025. Until next time, I'm Jeff Parles. This has been an NFL Draft special on Sports by the Book.